So I was supposed to be productive today because it's Saturday and, you know, do chores and stuff. But I instead realized that I was thinking about Denzel Washington, which is something I do often because he's one of my favorite actors. And he's just delightful. And then I was like, I wonder how many Denzel Washington movies I've seen. I feel like I've seen most of them. And I haven't even seen half of his filmography. I've seen, at the beginning of the day, I had seen 19, and there was about 25 films that I hadn't seen, not counting all of the TV, because, there's St. Elsewhere, which 130 episodes, I don't know. Someone has to give me the complete St. Elsewhere DVD set and lock me in a room for like a month, and then, I can take care of it. So I was like, I should watch Denzel Washington's movies that I'm missing, right? Because we've mostly seen his 90s films and some of his early 2000s films, and then everything else is sort of, scattered. So I went on Amazon to see what films, I saw what films I hadn't seen, and then I went on Amazon to see what was for rent, and quite a few of them that I have not seen were on Amazon, and they're like $3, and I was thinking, hey, I have time, and I could watch like 3 of them today, and it would still be cheaper than going to the movies to see one movie, but I would get, a day with Denzel. So in my beginnings of setting out to finish Denzel Washington's filmography, I watched 3 films starring him today. Well, the first one was not starring him. It was one of his first big roles. He was a supporting character, and it was called A Soldier's Story, which is also one of the handful of Best Picture nominees that I hadn't seen. So they, got to do 2 birds with one stone. It was directed by Norman Jewison. Strangely, only nominated for I think picture, screenplay, and supporting actor. That's it. And the screenplay was by Charles Fuller, based on his play, A Soldier's Play. And the supporting actor nomination went to Adolphe César, who's perhaps the villain, although there's not really a villain in this film. And it's about segregation, the Jim Crow South, World War II, and the inherent racism not only in white America, but in Black America as well, in having to live with white America, basically. And it was interesting for me because I found the social commentary within all of the interactions of everybody really fascinating. And I also find it doubly ironic almost in that within the context of the play, you also then have a film that is only able to get made because of a white director. And if you, in watching the film, that irony is just sort of really pungent. And, in terms of everything we've been talking about in terms of Oscar So White, if you look at the kind of films about the Black American experience that get nominated for Best Picture and who has heralded them, it's very rare for Black directed films to get nominated. I think there's been 2. I think Selma and Precious are it. And I think Precious is the only one where the director also got a nomination, Lee Daniels. Because, it's really depressing that you can count all these things on one hand. This was a really good film. I thought it was really well made, and every single person in the cast gives a great performance. Howard E. Rollins Jr. is the star. He was on it. I kept looking at him and going, why do I recognize you? He was the star on the TV version of In the Heat of the Night for the first 6 seasons. That's why I watched that a lot as a kid. And then, as I said, Adolphe César. And then David Alan Grier gives a really interesting non-comedic performance. Larry Riley gives a very heartbreaking performance. And then Denzel comes in and just sort of steals the show because he's Denzel. Patti LaBelle is in it for a second. Always good. So I definitely recommend this film. There's this great quote from Norman Jewison where he basically says they had to make this film at a low budget, and everyone had to work for scale because nobody wanted to make this film. And it's like, that is the history of Black history in cinema, basically, actually. Which is just preposterous. I just don't even... Ugh. Okay, this is really good. You should rent it. It's on Amazon. So then I followed that up with Spike Lee's Mo Bettah Blues, because I realized I've only seen Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, Inside Man, and Summer of Sam, and that's it for Spike Lee's films. Most of his films are also on Amazon, so I'm gonna try to go through his filmography. So this was written, produced, and directed by Spike Lee, and Spike Lee's also in it. And it's Spike Lee's father was a jazz musician, so I'm sure that was a bit of an influence on this film. It's about a jazz musician played by Denzel Washington who can't figure out what he wants in life other than to be a jazz musician, and he keeps fucking up all his relationships, both with his friends and with his ladies, and ladies plural. And it's sort of the his journey into figuring out how to realize there's more in life than just jazz. And it's got this beautiful ending that sums up not a lifetime, but several years in the scope of a relationship in 5 minutes, and it's really beautifully made. It's some of Spike Lee's most the sort of things that he is well known for in terms of his technical filmmaking are on brilliant display in this film. And I actually quite liked the women in this film. I thought they were, even though they both knew they were being cheated on, they both felt like they would be in this situation, and they knew why they were in this situation, and they were very honest with both themselves and with him. There's also a great performance from Wesley Snipes, who was also someone I really loved as a child, because I was a big fan of both Tu Wong Fu and Passenger 57. If you have not seen Passenger 57, you should see that. And hilariously, in Mo Bettah Blues from 1990, there's a joke about Arsenio Hall, and then in Passenger 57, which I think is from 1993, there's also a joke about Arsenio Hall. He's all the jokes. So I recommend this film. It's very good. Also, again, on Amazon. And then I ended the night with The Great Debaters, which is Denzel Washington's second film he directed. I have not seen Antoine Fisher also, but that is on Amazon. I'm going to watch it soon. But I wanted to watch The Great Debaters because I love Nate Parker, and I want to see all his movies, and I can't wait to see his directorial debut later this year. I'm stoked. So it has Denzel Washington, Forest Whitaker, Kimberly Elise, Nate Parker, Jermaine Williams, and Journey Smollett. And also Denzel Whitaker, who's not related to Forest Whitaker, but is named after Denzel Washington. And it's based on the true story of a team of debaters from Wiley College, a historically black college in Texas, in the mid-30s, dealing with, again, Jim Crow South, and how they beat the Harvard University debate team. And this is the sort of film, it has, with its pedigree, it has the Weinsteins as the EPs, and it's the kind of film that I 110% believe if it were a white cast, although this film could not be made as a white story, but if this sort of story was done with a white history, this would have been nominated for Best Picture. This is a Best Picture, film. And it feels like the kind of films that in the 2000s were being nominated for Best Picture. It somehow wasn't. And it's a bunch of great performances, really, really interesting things about both the politics of Jim Crow South, but also the politics of today. And it made an interesting sort of bookend with a soldier story. Not that they really dealt with the Jim Crow South in the opposite ways or anything, because both of them were written by black people, but the sort of things that Denzel as a director sort of put in there were very different than the way Jewison did. For example, both films had at one point a bus stop because someone was coming on the bus in both films. And they showed a bench, it almost looked like the same bench, that said whites only on the bench. But on when Norman Jewison did it, he like really focused on it and really focused on all the segregation signs and really wanted you to, like, as a white viewer, feel bad about this and be like, oh, look at your history, look at your past, right? But from Denzel's point of view, that bus is just there, and that, you know, I mean, that bench is just there, and that is just what they had to deal with. And it's not really, he doesn't linger on it, because you can't linger in this situation, you know. You just have to keep going. And I found that very, very fascinating. There's also a really horrifying sequence with a lynch mob. Earlier in the film, they illuminate the history of where lynching comes from, and that was terrifying. And then follow that up by showing an actual lynch mob. That's one of the scariest moments I've seen in a while in cinema. It was just utterly terrifying. Just a great film, and I look forward to seeing his other film. And I look forward. He's supposed to be adapting a bunch of things for HBO, I think, and I just want to see everything that he's doing. He's just such a great addition to cinema. I love him. So this was my day with Denzel Washington. I will continue to be, watching more of his films throughout the year as I finish up all of the other ones that I have missed. Quite a list. So you should watch this. They're all on there. I mean, just go through his filmography and then go on Amazon, and they're almost all there. So you can just like have your own mini Denzel Washington festival if you want. It's a good use of your time, I promise.